Hello and welcome to CEO Insights, the Living Organization podcast with Vitaly Giman. With me is Amy Elisabeth Fox from Mobius Executive Leadership. Amy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Vitaly. Lovely to be with you.
It's a pleasure. We have a kindred spirit here because, we've been talking now for, I think, a few years over LinkedIn, but we never actually met face to face. It's a real pleasure to meet you today.
Yes, wonderful.
Amy, we'll get right into it. Your company has been around for a long time and dealt in leadership development and development of soft skills. Tell us a little bit about the company and its unique selling proposition.
Well, we have the wonderful practice of living at what I call the nexus between best practice and next practice. So in our leadership development, in our coaching, in our team coaching, we're trying to bring together sort of the best canon of what leadership and executive development theory tells us about how to help somebody unlock their potential, how to bring their full self to work on the one hand, drawing on a lot of the thought leadership from Harvard's community, where my sister teaches at Harvard Law School and where I've had the privilege of studying with many of the seminal thinkers in our field, and what we call next practice, which is a more experiential way of unlocking people's full humanity in the workplace.
Oh, how wonderful. I mean, that's why I said we're a kindred spirit, because at the end of all my career working as a corporate executive, I realized, listen, at the end of the day, it's people's potential to drive organizational profits. That's how organization thrives, by developing the people, and technology enables that, but it's not the main focus. So how do we do that? How do we enable people's potential?
Well, on one hand, one of the books from Harvard Law School that we draw from is called Difficult Conversations: How to Discuss What Matters Most. And you could argue that the transaction of every conversation is how you really build an organizational culture and how you drive towards a business strategy. So in one sense, we're really looking at how do you have more and more productive conflict and more high impact conversation. So in that sense, changing the world one conversation at a time.
Oh, lovely. So we're kind of doing it. We're demonstrating it, right? We're not having
100%.
conflict yet, but maybe we should have conflict. But no, I think there is also conflict is a very interesting world. I mean, me and my wife, we have always conflict, right? But there is conflict that is destructive and there's conflict that is productive, right? Maybe tell me, like, what do you mean by conflict and why is it a good thing?
Yeah, the distinction you made is important. Productive conflict means things are, there aren't a lot of elephants in the room that the team feels are undiscussable, that when somebody puts forward an opinion, the team feels encouraged to disagree or to have a divergent viewpoint, and that's welcomed. And there's what my friend Linda Hill at Harvard Business School calls creative abrasion. There's a welcome kind of tension in the room because you're grappling with real differences of opinion and myriad expertise, as opposed to deferring to institutional authority or landing prematurely on the first idea, which often means people are stacking their hands around the wrong idea or a sub-optimized idea. So in one sense, productive conflict is really about welcoming multiple perspectives. Um, Maybe I'll pause there. There's a lot to say, but that's
Yeah.
a
No,
definition.
I like welcoming multiple perspectives. That rings a bell for me because I spent 5 years in a conflict resolution training program with the Jungian analysts and so on, and we had a most amazing experience through conflict. And so I can really feel that what you're talking about. We were dealing with societal conflict, like, black people against white, or gay against straight, and all of the issues that come up, how much heat there is, and we're observing it now. I mean, look how much hatred there is. And we were supposed to sit in the middle and facilitate that conflict. And there would be like 100 people on one side and 100. And the only rule was like non-violence in terms of physical violence, but you could scream at each. And I was in the middle of that, and I realized, oh my God, if this is, of course, this is nothing like organizations. We don't get, but the energy in the room to be able to facilitate this vortex of energy without getting shot in between. It's a real skill, isn't it? I mean, it's not an easy task to be in the middle of the eye of the storm. Right?
It's not an easy task, and one of the things that Mobius did 20 years ago when we were founded was to create a practitioner development arm called the Next Practice Institute, because we recognized the interdisciplinary and emotional intelligence approach that was required to training people to do the very high heat work you're describing is a multi-year journey of development and learning. And there wasn't a graduate school in this body of skills, so we made our own. But I want to go back to what you said, Vitaly, because it's very important. When people are willing to grapple with very important geopolitical topics, issues of societal divide, and there's a dedication to stay in the heat, to
Mm.
keep everyone physically safe, but to be willing to be in the honest version of that, the raw version of that conversation. The potential for healing in that setting is tremendous. And the dysfunctional version of conflict in organizations is not, just that people feel sometimes in the most horrific versions invaded physically, invaded emotionally, abused, but that people are really bringing their reactivity and sort of triggered state of um, out, very, very upset judgments, blame, threat into the workplace, then of course the conflict becomes unproductive and actually shuts everyone down and lowers the level of psychological safety that enables learning, that enables development, that enables innovation, that enables bold action. So part of the calibration we're trying to help leaders to exactly make is what you're pointing to, what level of conflict and what quality of conversation is opens the field in which we can see a complex picture and what actually shuts down the flow of information that we need to make good decisions.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. What I've learned from what you're saying is, if there is a kind of a paradigm shift you have to make, and this is why we're the living organization. We recognize that like 40 years of study, and I've done 810 interviews so far with CEOs. 810. So there's a lot of interviews. The outliers that get what you're talking about, right? Like, they view organization differently. It's a paradigm shift in how you view the organization. The conventional view is, okay, it's a system. We need to program the system to make money. I mean, come on, it's a production machine, and people are the kind of the resources, right? You feed in the resources, and out comes the output, the products and services, and you make money, right? And that's an inanimate version, and not a very complicated version, uncomplex version, but it's not a machine, is it? It's not an income generating machine.
It's really profound what you're describing. And I think that paradigm shift is the exact cutting edge of where we are in the world of executive development, starting to understand how much of corporate culture has been built on a mechanistic or technical view of the workplace, as opposed to exactly what you're pointing to, Vitaly, which is a living human system. And what does it require to create a context of co-creation and emergence and collective intelligence for a group of actual humans who function in relation. It isn't actually a technical solution. It's really a whole other level of understanding human capacity, human capabilities, and organizational adaptation, which is a much more accurate picture of a living human system. It changes, it evolves, it matures, and helping people to have that fabric of connection, I think, will be an essential part of winning the future.
Yeah, how wonderful that we agree on that, because it's not easy to make this paradigm shift, because I'm an MBA. I'm an MBA in finance, right? So, and I studied ratio analysis, labor relations, strategic management, all of that stuff, and I loved it. And then I walked out, I go, what do I do with this? I have 1,200 souls under me, and they're looking for meaning, inspiration. They're looking for career development. They're looking for, why can't I talk to this guy? Why do I? How do I resolve my conflict with this guy? And I wasn't trained in any of that, right? And I was like at the top school.
Yeah,
So it sounds like we haven't.
you're pointing to one of the three reasons people make this paradigm shift.
Yeah.
One reason is I recognize that the people who work for me are yearning for a kind of leadership I wasn't trained to provide. So I have to go deep in myself and increase my self-awareness, increase my emotional intelligence, and increase my ability to create and galvanize followership. It's a very different set of skills than strategic analysis and all of the engineering orientation that most of us received in business school. The second reason is the next generation entering the workforce won't be satisfied unless a place ignites them in their sense of meaning making and purpose, exactly as you said.
Yeah.
So that's going to force, I think, a different kind of leadership. But ultimately, it's going to be driven by the level of what we now call VUCA, or increased complexity.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a world that's predictable and can be planfully thoughtful in terms of problem solving, and sort of, even if it's a complicated matter, it can be anticipated in a linear way, in an analytic way. As the world gets more and more complex, command and control work plans will not get us there. And you're going to have people who can really listen deeply and sense the complexity of a system and differentiate the signal from the noise. And that intuitive skill, that sort of dialogical skill, is a very different, it's a paradigmatic shift, exactly as you said.
Yeah, yeah, and it always takes a long time because we're kind of stuck in the old Newtonian paradigm, or I call it Newton, and we need quantum power paradigm, and but it takes a few decades for it to even the academia doesn't know anything about it. Just a few bright souls. Even how I mean, I love Howard University, Robert Keegan's work and so on, but the majority, 90%, is still stuck in the 80s somehow, or 70s, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, and it's a very different style of learning. In our leadership programs, people don't come in, sit in a chair, and take notes from a PowerPoint presentation.
yeah,
You can't, as you say, you can't learn this particular set of skills too quickly because it's about inner maturation, and you can't learn them in the old style of pedagogy and education.
yeah.
It's a full-bodied learning. It's a
It's
relational learning. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a full body experience, right? It's you
exactly.
literally have to feel when somebody's screaming at you to be able to shift your energy, go into your heart and respond from a different place. That's not an intellectual thing, right?
Yeah, and in high heat settings, we know the body will revert to its habit. So if you want to be in a new paradigm and have a new option available to you in that moment, you have to practice it for a long time before you get there. It's
Yeah,
exactly true what you said.
yeah. How wonderful that. I mean, we see the same thing because I've been honestly, as an MBA engineer who, IT guy, I've been speaking to all my CEO colleagues and I'm going, guys, you got to have to go through a whole new life. Right? The way you are now and the way and where you're going, you're going to have to somehow live through a whole new experience. You can't get it intellectually. You don't have that much time. You can't go to an MBA and get a degree in this. So get your hands dirty. Go to.
I'm with you completely, but maybe I'll just add a perfume of hope to
Yeah.
that, what you're pointing at, which is it's actually natural to be open-hearted. It's natural for us as leaders and as humans to care for something more than our own ambition, or not exclusively profit. I'm all for business profit, business success,
Yeah.
shareholder, but not at the cost of the humanity of the workplace. And in my leadership programs, it takes people less than 72 hours to kind of melt the austerity of interaction through which they're used to interacting, and start to be a bit more vulnerable, a little bit more attuned,
Yeah.
more curious and open intellectually. So I think the good news is we're really just unwinding an unhealthy dynamic, and returning to something that's actually, I think, much more humane and natural to us.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Actually, 80%. Or all my friends, they have a beautiful heart. They just were trained in all ways. And
Exactly.
another perfume that I want to add to maybe yours, what I found, and actually there was a study called Firms of Endearment. I don't know if you read Raj Soda. And so this is not only just a nice thing to do, or actually it's a very profitable thing to do. All those firms that were more heart-centered, more employee-oriented, they outperformed by 12 to 1 on the stock exchange. So, right.
Yeah, I mean, this is the wonderful secret of this paradigm shift, is um, doing it is the right thing to do, but it's also the profitable thing to do.
Yeah,
Uh, and Raj is one of the wonderful pioneers who's been thinking about what's the benefit of creating a more and more conscious business.
yeah. Yeah. Amy, so good. We could chat for hours, but we'll stop here. But I'd love to have you back on the program and we'll go
It would
maybe
be a
deep.
pleasure, Vitaly. I'd love to talk to you about these things. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you.